absolute pleasure to welcome you all to the London AI Hub and to our inaugural event on our extensive events calendar. The London AI Hub is intended as a home for the ecosystem, a gateway, if you will, for AI practitioners and enthusiasts alike to come in, know where to meet, to collaborate on a daily basis and jointly strive towards driving forward the future of AI in the United Kingdom. This was co-initiated by three parties, TechNation, Merantix and Hussein Kasai. What we're looking to do then with this space is provide a co-working space for AI native teams, a residency program of all sizes. Further to that, we're looking to support these with a wider community. Entrepreneurs and technologists, whether they're residents here or not, investors, corporates, academics and researchers, and the institutions to which they're attached, and finally policymakers. We fully understand the importance of the physical peer-to-peer network too, so we're looking to convene people as regularly as possible through an events calendar hosted on site. We're also proud to partner with Amazon Web Services and TechSpace. Tonight though, we are having an interactive Q&A session on AI native building. This is your opportunity to ask the burning questions. I will then hand over to our moderator, Agata.
Thank you. No clapping hands. I can see. Come on guys, you need to wake up a little bit. Great to meet you. Again, thank you very much for the introductions. We'll try to keep this session very interactive. So we're going to invite now Chirag and Jim to our mini stage, but then from then onwards, it's really you and us. So please, keep your questions really ready because this is going to be a very interactive session. So Chirag and Jim, welcome.
Thank you very much for having us.
So I'm just clapping, you didn't.
Okay, try again.
So let's start with the introduction. So my name is Agata Leliwa Nowicka. I'm the managing partner at Visionaries. Visionaries is an AI incubator in partnership with Google. Basically, we support deep tech and science-driven startups to accelerate their journey, growth journey. So that's me. Jim, why don't we start with you?
Cool, sure, I'll introduce myself. So up until about 6 months ago, I was the CEO at a startup called Prolific. That's something you may have come across. It's a data startup for human data, which is used by a lot of the large language models for training AI. And in the last few months, I've been working on a few different things, one of which is angel investing through a few different mediums, including the Ventures Together Syndicate. That includes the very famous now Hussein Kasai. And also working at Imperial to sort of help early stage startups, so very excited to learn more about what people are building.
Great. Sure.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Chirag. I'm a principal at MMC Ventures. We are an early stage fund that invests predominantly at seed and Series A across enterprise software, fintech, and healthcare. And some of our portfolio companies include Synthesia, Copper in fintech, and Baba Fertility in the healthcare space. We invest across Europe, and as you can imagine, the team has been spending time in AI before I think the AI wave kicked off. I think we did the Synthesia investment back in 2019, invested in MindsDB, Superlink, so tend to be quite thematic and tend to go quite deep on these things. Before MMC, I worked across seed to growth investments at other VC funds, including Atomico and Lakestar.
Right. So at this stage, I thought it would be good to get some feel for the room. So raise your hands if you're a founder. Oh wow, that's incredible. So who are the other people? Please tell us, like literally. You, Tom?
Hi, Tom Groff, fund manager of a venture growth fund that Aviva Investors has recently launched.
Okay, so we have some investors in the room. What about who else? So angel investors, VC investors, and anybody else? So it's, okay,
journalists.
Oh, you're journalists. Okay, nice. Welcome. Okay, so it's going to be a very interesting therefore session because We'll be covering some topics as well, but again, this is about you getting as much as possible information with these guys, maybe including me. So why don't I just get started, just to keep the to get the ball rolling? Because both of you are very close to obviously AI startups, both on the infrastructure layer and then those that are applying AI to accelerate their growth. What are some of the themes that you see when it comes to startup formation in the AI space?
Yeah, happy to go first. I would say I don't think it's been ever as easy to start a company, but as difficult to keep your customers. So if I look back at the last 12 to 18 months, we have seen companies go in the US from 0 to 100 million ARR in less than 12 months. In Europe, we've seen companies go from 0 to 20 in 2, 3, 4 months. That wasn't the case before AI. But at the same time, I think there's a big question around durability and defensibility, which matters because as you start a company, you can be quite capital efficient today. But once you raise VC capital, it becomes you have to think about defensibility, your path to sort of 10 to 100 million ARR. And so that's where you have to decide, do you want to be a capital efficient player such as Midjourney, for example, which is now a 200 million ARR business having raised no capital at all? Or do you want to go down the VC path where you then have to think about on the company formation side around go-to-market strategy, how do you differentiate yourself, how do you implement yourself in your customer base so that they don't switch to your competitors?
Yeah, I'd echo a lot of that. I mean, certainly it's never been easier for people to build early stage startups. Now we're seeing incredible acceleration with the kind of tools that people can leverage to do that. I think there's a stat I saw this week, the Y Combinator said 95% of the code in startups in this batch was AI generated, which is incredible, and it's really kind of accentuating what founders have always needed, but it's like a deep understanding of their customers and market. But I think that this affects early stage team formation because it's making startups more accessible to a wider range of non-technical founders and maybe changing that early stage team composition and particularly the scale, the sort of speed at which you need to grow those teams. Certainly we are seeing incredible kind of revenue growth in AI startups. So again, I was looking at startups today, Lovable, which has got phenomenal kind of revenue stats. I think some people have come across it. There is this question as to whether that is kind of that sugar rush of kind of kind of easy AI startup where people are testing things and it's going to change. Will that kind of revenue growth be sustainable in these startups? And to what extent is that going to change the way in which we then build and stage, fund startups in later stages? I think that's unproven. I would say that I'm not a VC and maybe I would kind of hopefully see the way that startups can build really changing. It is easier to build more capital efficient startups, and I think there are going to be a wider range of options available to startups as they scale. Now I think it certainly will be able to be possible to build with smaller teams. You're still going to need to build expertise to build those complex, scalable, what will still be technical businesses in the later stages. But I think a number of different paths will open up to founders, so really incredible opportunities to build companies in different ways now.
Yeah. Okay, great. So at this point, since we have so many founders in the room, how many of you actually raised venture capital? One? Okay. And then maybe therefore a follow-up question, since we have such a huge majority. Have you been considering raising a venture capital? Okay, wow. So now I need to ask you a question. Why haven't you been considering venture capital, basically raising venture capital? Whoever wants to go. Again?
We love to keep the company like we prefer to
if you can. So the answer is you want to create more revenue. Who else? Like just okay, yes. I don't know your name.
Sam.
Sam, yes.
Similar, but also the 5 developers that I thought I needed, and now for $20 for a
Again, could you repeat so everybody can
Sorry.
hear?
So the 5 developers that I thought I needed when I did my forecasts,
Yeah.
I can now cover the vast majority of what they would do
Yeah.
between myself and my
So
business partner.
something that Chirag was exactly talking, or actually both of you mentioned. So basically the answer has been just efficiency. You don't need as many people and therefore you don't need as much capital. Anybody else wants to go? Yeah.
It's a lot of time. Like actually go through the funding phases and stuff like that compared to actually building the product. Like what is the merit of providing compared to just seeing customers?
Yeah. So basically prioritizing your time to on your customers.
Because equally there's a lot of loopholes to get through, loops to get through it to actually get the funding. Where in the end, well, why can't I just go to the customer first, build up with them, have their actual money come through, and then go that way?
This is interesting. So even considering potentially not raising venture capital at all, just being self-sufficient when it comes to funding because of your revenues. That's what you're saying. Okay, interesting.
So the fact that only one hand went up when you asked who has raised VC capital in this room, right? And this is the AI hotspot of London. Is what does it say? It either says that the UK and London in particular has no faith in the VC community, or that we're doing things very differently from San Francisco. What do you think it is?
But why would you say so? So the answer is okay. Do we do things differently? That's a very interesting question. But do you have confidence that there are no other meetups right now? Hey, it could be right now happening in San Francisco, asking the same question. Meaning that because we don't know who doesn't get funded. Do you see what I'm saying?
I'm sure, but I'm sure if you had the hotspot of San Francisco founders in a room, which I suggest this is the equivalent of London, all the hands would have gone up.
I don't have as much confidence about that. Personally, I don't know.
I question that as well, because I do think certainly there's a much greater availability of capital in San Francisco still, but you definitely hear founders in the Valley saying that they're less inclined to raise capital now. They want to build capital-efficient businesses, they want to wait, they want to have more control for longer. Certainly, it depends, but I think that this is a trend that you're seeing in both places to some degree. I would ask maybe, who's not raised money because they can't, or who's not raised money because they don't want to? We didn't quite get to that. I don't know. So who would like to raise but hasn't?
I'll reply. So we work in healthcare. So our issue is the amount of time it takes for customers to adopt stuff means you burn a lot of cash. Now we've been quite successful with being able to just keep 2 to 3 of us working to get to the point. We would like to raise capital, but actually what will I spend it on? We're now getting to the point where we've gone from a customer that we're working with developing it to an opportunity of 5 customers that we need to service. So only now would we be sitting there going, actually we now need to have 5 headcount, not 2. So we're really just getting to the point where we want to raise capital, but that's our market. Our market takes forever to do anything.
Yeah.
So it's really about runway.
Yeah.
But yes, we are looking for capital, and you're in health tech, so we want to chat afterwards.
We should chat, yes.
Yeah.
People are looking to raise, watch this guy.
Yeah. It's not what else is raising.
Not many people here in this room.
So what I gather almost is like just from everybody who's shared is that if you have an opportunity to generate revenue quickly, you just you probably defer this venture capital because maybe there isn't even opportunity to create self-sufficient business, at least as much as possible, so you protect that kind of cap table. You keep it quite lean. But depending on the sector, I guess, because some sectors will just mean longer runway.
In terms of money that I find worth it, it's knowledge, if that makes sense. So if their venture capital had knowledge, that was something that I do not have.
Okay.
And that is important. If it's more of just they have the money with no knowledge, like if it's someone who's quite early to a VC scene, and so they don't have that much knowledge of how to actually start a startup, then they advise, with my money, I'll ask you to do X. I'm not interested.
So another thing that came up is basically, once again, I'll just rephrase so everybody here. So basically, it's also about bringing something else additional to capital, so something that founders don't have. And I guess this is very specific. And to be fair, that topic has been around for about 4 or 5 years now, of what really, the question about what extra value venture capital investors really add. Since 2020, 21, when the market was so hot, and therefore differentiation between funds became kind of the focus. Do you have any comments on this, by the way?
I wonder if this is different now in the sense that does anyone know how to build AI businesses or AI-enabled businesses yet? Certainly venture capitals and lots of people know how to build SaaS businesses. That's like a playbook for that. We don't yet have a playbook for AI businesses, and I wonder if like that changes the value add or like what it is that investors need to provide.
I would say I think the two levers that are evergreen and never change are help with hiring and help making money, which is sort of like customer interactions.
Yeah.
And even in the AI world, I don't think that changes much. And I think sort of coming back to, if you have a prosumer business, it's relatively easy to get to your customers. It makes sense to bootstrap it and get to a certain scale. I guess the question is, if you have two different companies that are building a similar product and are direct competitors, if one of them has, it's a bit of like game theory, right? Which is one of them has 50 million on the balance sheet versus one that doesn't. What does that mean in terms of outcomes that you achieve, right? And if you look at in San Francisco, but also here, you have companies that are hundreds of millions of revenues, profitable, but they still end up raising capital, partly as a war chest, just to fend off competition. So at a certain scale, I think that starts mattering as well. And I think the other point I would make here is that we are all still a bit in this honeymoon phase when it comes to vibe coding and like building things quickly. We have yet to see what it means to actually maintain those code bases. In like 6 months or 12 months time, and you can see this today already, which is Cursor kind of sucks when it comes to maintaining your large code bases. So that's going to become an issue where you would need people and resources to effectively like maybe rebuild it or maintain it, assuming product don't evolve going forward.
Yeah, I just want to respond to those comments. So despite kind of what's said there about very early stage startups having higher leverage, I think that startups still will need capital. It's just they might need a different stage or for different things. So now instead of hiring engineers, maybe you need that money for distribution and for branding and marketing. Maybe you're going to need to still spend money late stage in terms of scaling technical platforms. Although I do think that's a more interesting question where clearly you can't build scalable software using these tools alone yet. But what's that going to be like in 12 months' time? We just don't know. This stage.
I think that overall, I think it's a huge question mark. What that capital is, I agree with both of you that capital is probably going to be necessary at some stage, but what that capital is going to be necessary for? Because at the same time, marketing, that's also big space for AI as well. So that is going to be commoditized as well. So I'm thinking, what that capital is going to be for. So we have a couple of questions.
Well, I suppose the obvious question is not just about your aspirations, it's the market you're working in. I mean, you're talking America's a continent, right? The UK's a country. And, today it's a global economy. So if your aspiration is, let's say, target Southeast Asia or just, as a UK company, you're going to have the network and resources to expand. So is it global? And I think what my question really is that over the sectors in the UK, obviously, AI can help phenomenally in productivity gains in lots of non-tech sectors that can be tranquil. I'm just wondering from your feedback, is it data? What are the sectors that are growing fast with AI and have more of an appetite for an investor at this time? Is it a new market, or is it a market that's growing? Or is it data-driven, or where are those opportunities?
Yeah, I think there are a few things bound together there. Just to comment on
Let me just rephrase the question so everybody hears. So basically the question is about what are the current, kind of the most ripe opportunities for investors to invest? Yeah.
Just to comment on your first point there as well about the difficulty of building companies from the UK to target international markets. I do think that's an interesting one. I think it's something that we approached at Prolific, where our largest market by far was the US before we ever had people on the ground there. And I do think it's possible to build and sell to markets outside the UK, and there might be a better opportunity now than ever to do that with the availability of talent and the benefits of building in the UK. But for sure, the networks still make a difference, and I do think that is maybe where VCs in those specific countries can add value, particularly late stage growth. When you talk about the sort of opportunities for AI next, I think this is the kind of big kind of mega question to me. Is like, what is coming next after we've kind of now established this market for these frontier large language models. We've kind of seen how that's played out now. We see that a lot of the gains are occurring to the big players, to the cloud hosting services, to NVIDIA. Where are the opportunities and where does the money accrue to in that kind of those value layers next? Personally, I'm seeing kind of three main areas here, which I think I see a lot of UK startups targeting and looking for funding for. The first one is in kind of AI infrastructure and deployment and tools that sit around how we use these AI models. So they might be things in like networking, cybersecurity, developer tools, which are helping other startups build using these tools, implementation tools for AI models. The second one is kind of data startups. This is my kind of own sort of personal area of interest here, where I think that now these models have become kind of sort of slightly qualified. Maybe it's slightly controversial to say that, but we seem to be heading in that direction. The thing which I think differentiates your ability to succeed with them and apply them to verticals is about having access to specific high quality or proprietary data sets. And so I think startups that are targeting those in different industry verticals are very, very interesting. And there are obviously tons of opportunities for those. And again, within different international markets in Europe particularly. And then I think the third one there is like what it is that SaaS evolves into. And there's a lot of talk about AI agentic businesses and SaaS may be dying or becoming something else. Personally, I feel like that's a little bit overblown, but certainly these businesses are going to transform. And even if it's similar companies evolving in those verticals, they're going to look very different and they're going to heavily use AI tooling. So I think that that's a really interesting area of opportunity there with a lot of things that can evolve.
One trend that I see that none of you mentioned, interestingly, I thought you would, that I see, and it's a huge opportunity for startups, in my opinion, because obviously, as you know, again, we've always been talking about enterprise B2B SaaS, and that's the biggest category for investment anyway, for all venture capital funds. Now, when we take that B2B and then we talk about agents, now, in my opinion, there's a very interesting layer of startups in terms of making those agents usable, compliant, and actually fitting into existing systems, because those big enterprises are not going to change from day to day, and at the same time, there's a huge appetite for them, especially when you think about the workflow, streamlining workflow inside those organizations to engage with agents, and therefore, how do you build that interface layer with those companies that fits the purpose of those huge organizations. So that's one of the opportunities that I see, and I think there will be plenty startups coming out there.
Yeah, I think that's definitely right, by the way. And one of the actual few types of companies that you see really making money out of AI at the moment are large consultancy companies, which are effectively solving this problem for now. But surely in the future there will be products and services that do that.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I think Accenture is now at 1.5 million revenue out of AI consulting. So probably have been a pretty good beneficiary of that. I think we will see a RPA 2.0, and then maybe in 10 years' time, we will have to rethink how sort of internet architecture is done, where you actually don't need UI if agents are talking to other agents.
Yeah, so that's when we are talking about, in my opinion, that's when we are talking about SaaS being dead. Meaning that's when we are going to go more horizontal as opposed to kind of in that very typical SaaS architecture. So there was a question there, so I want to pick up on this.
Question for Jim. I'm really interested in the conversation about agentic AI versus SaaS. So we're an agentic business. We're doing it for a year. We've solved issues about how to get all the agents to be both autonomous and yet collaborative. And we're just about getting to the point where we're going to solve what you said about the human AI interaction. But actually, what's interesting over the last couple of months talking to customers, we realise they've bought Salesforce or, in our case, a healthcare equivalent, which really just replaced either a spreadsheet or a filing cabinet. When the AI does 75% of that work, and we have that now, right, even with the most basic MVP you could ever imagine, the question is, why do you need to buy a Salesforce? Why do you need to buy a CRM when the humans talk to the agent to give the agent the information they can't solve? And then the agent carries on. The question then comes inside, why do you need something like Salesforce? Why do you need a big electronic patient record, which is literally a filing cabinet, when the AI does the work you were doing in the EPR?
So is it more of a kind of philosophical question?
It's not like today absolutely is a big leap, right? You go talk to customers and they're talking about how much they hate those SaaS software, and then you say you can get rid of it with AI, they're like, oh no, it's too much. Give me 3 years, you won't buy Salesforce, you buy an agent.
So maybe the question here, so basically it's all about, so I'm not sure whether everybody heard, but basically it's about agentic future, and then yet, we have this image, let's say, of the future, agentic future, and then on the other hand, many of these organizations still use Salesforce and basic CRMs.
Yeah.
So the question maybe that I would like to ask, building on what you said, is that how do you think, because let's assume that's going to happen, but to jump even from today to, let's say, 3-4 years, what do you think that those steps are going to look like?
So I think system of records will lose value, but I think, unless there's a radical shift, as you described, you would still have the data sitting somewhere, right? I think the question is sort of like where, how much value there is if I have an agent who can sort of extract it out of, your product, right? And look, I've already seen companies which effectively, if you're an enterprise using SAP, they would track how you interact with that SAP interface, and they would rebuild it for you using agents. And suddenly, the implementation or sort of like the migration that used to take 4 years and would used to cost 200 million gets done, relatively quickly, very organically, right? So it's already happening, and then you can extract the data relatively quickly. And so yes, there's a big question around the value of system of records. But the data will sit somewhere. The barriers to entry will just be lower, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say something similar to the comments that I made by other people, where I think that this is going to happen, but I see it as more of a transition here, where maybe your SaaS product will become more and more agentic. It will still have data, it will still have an implementation connected to the rest of your systems, it will still have support and other things that companies need. Maybe contractual agreements will take longer to change, but it will gradually become more and more agentic. So if you like software's eating the world, but AI is going to eat your software, and it will just kind of transition more and more in that way. How long it will take probably depends on the particular industries and the particular types of issues that they face, and as you said, they're just not ready for it yet. It will kind of sneak up on people, I think, the way they'll get used to it. And the way in which individuals will get used to dealing with agents and begin to trust them, which I think will be an issue just for users in the first instance right now. So I think these kind of SaaS systems will become more hybrid to start with, and may get more and more agentic until maybe they're purely a whole bunch of agents running around talking to each other, and actually, indeed, agents will become real colleagues and they will interact with agents at other companies, and maybe they will also coordinate among companies. Who knows where it's all going.
And my view as well, that hasn't been covered, even though I agree with everyone you said, I think that it also will come down to building those use cases within those corporations, because they will need to get buy-in as well. We don't, as humans, we are much slower than capabilities and potential of AI. So therefore, it depends on what sort of, and I would believe, the low risk kind of roles will be the most engaging with agents, and that's how it's going to be overall. The whole case is going to be built out. Has it kind of given you some inspiration?
Now we are aligned, this is a bit of blame. I mean, I still think that those systems of records are hugely expensive. Again, we're coming from a healthcare point of view, so you imagine everything moves in 10-year cycles. So honestly, what the healthcare think as high tech is something that we were doing 20 years ago. So they take a long time. We were dealing with a vendor, their minimum implementation is 18 months.
Yeah.
And it's an EMS system. Right? It's not a lot of stuff. We can fix that in 24 hours with a bit of vector reg, right? Not complicated, and outdo them. That's £1 million contract. For us, that would be 25 grand. So
I think the issue there is it's a high stake domain, and people are emotional. Even though whatever product is out there, it's maybe as accurate or better than existing vendors. It's kind of like you don't get shot for buying IBM kind of thing, right? People lose lives if it doesn't work, and so people just go with the reliable vendor. I think there will be adoption. It will just take slightly longer in finance, healthcare, legal, but it's already so much innovation has already happened in that space. It will just take longer.
Yeah, I was actually on the panel a few months ago. The person who joined that panel was I'm not going to mention it. One of the major banks, and she was literally talking about that for highly regulated business, but on the other hand, they have this huge opportunity of adopting agents, and they are kind of trying to meet somewhere in the middle. So obviously, make their compliance and onboarding and obviously due diligence processes as efficient as possible. Actually, also using AI, but internal models to speed up that process as well. But obviously, regulated businesses have got other reporting on top of them. So hopefully that is going to also kind of get shortened. But there's a limit to how much they can influence that.
So it's interesting you say about error rates. So for the last 6 months or so, we have been talking to customers, and the first thing they keep saying is, we don't trust AI because it makes mistakes. So we've just spent several months auditing what really goes on in hospitals. The hospital system as a whole, it's not individuals, it's the system that's down. Probably 1 in 3 is a mistake. It costs £30 billion to the NHS to treat people where they've done something wrong. Now, we processed 10,000 patients, the AI, ChatGPT at the back end, went wrong 4% of the time. Right? And we've managed to engineer around that problem. And actually now the evidence is the AI is not everywhere, clearly, but in a lot of these places where mistakes start, the AI is safer. And because that small error never happened, the big error is actually reduced. So it is a challenge to get people over that, and it's just a question for us. Healthcare, it's about evidence, and evidence takes time, and that's why we in healthcare can only bootstrap for so long before you run out your own money.
I think maybe one point I would say is like the model that seemed to work in healthcare is expert on the loop, where the final decision is with the clinician on accepting or declining, the outputs. There's another kind of question around data privacy with using certain models. You have to deploy them in a certain way, so that's also part of the hesitation, right? But yes, I'm with you. If the product is better, it will win in the long term. But in these high-stake domains, it just takes starting over.
It does. It's interesting to about. Sorry, I know you want to talk. It's interesting to about expert in the loop. So literally, that has been. So we've got medical device agentic AI, and actually one of the clauses was you have to have the expert in the loop for clinical decisions. And yet we're at a customer today, and they're like, why? Because it's like a binary decision. They either are or they are not. We don't need a doctor for that. So we're having to now, sorry for everyone, to re-engineer it so the doctors can give the AI consent in advance for the AI to do it autonomously. And it's really an interesting, sorry, and I know I'm talking all the space, but it's really an interesting space because the people that we really thought would not trust AI over their own judgment are the ones that are sitting there, if it's this level, make a decision, and it's really allowed the doctors to operate at the top of their license. If you're a 30-year cancer specialist, you don't want to be doing referral triage, right?
Yeah. Okay.
We should
few questions.
Yeah,
I want to have a kind of round of just catch up with this queue basically. So let's start from the back. Since guys you're already not privileged, it's a bit compromised.
Mine is first, and I'm going to go. And
okay, so there are more questions from the back.
As well.
Yes.
And I'm going to rewind a bit to the whole who's taking VC money, who hasn't, why not.
Yeah.
Does anybody work with venture debt? And does it come up in any of the conversations? I'm asking the audience, but also...
venture debt is a little bit, okay, so then you have to be a little bit at the later stage, because venture debt from my perspective is... Really? Okay, I would like to speak with those providers. But basically the question is, who basically has taken a venture debt in the room?
Or considered it.
Or considering.
Or even knew it was available.
I think the perception is it's much better.
Yeah.
I knew that
Isn't that the wrong perception?
Revenue rather than,
Sorry?
or isn't that stage associated revenue?
It can be, yeah, it can be tied to.
So if you're more capital efficient earlier, the timing for venture debt comes further to the left.
It could be, but the issue for me, a lot of people don't even consider venture debt as an option. That's what I hear in a lot of these kind of sessions. I'll come back in a second.
Yeah, I just want to, sorry, can I answer that from the kind of operator perspective? It's definitely something that I was aware of as an operator, as COO, and have considered. I think there's some niche cases where it's suitable, but personally my feeling is that it's rare that it isn't more suitable to either use conventional debt or venture equity deals.
There are many ways to skin the...
It seems to me that you have some secret knowledge about some underground world about venture debt.
Can I speak?
Yes, please.
There's many ways to skin the growth capital cap. I don't think you need to be later stage. And one of the things that people I think miss in early stages is that they give away too much of their company. They dilute too quickly. And when you look at the cost of that dilution later down the line, it's far more than the price of debt. I only bring it up because I hear it so infrequently.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, lucky in this room, it seems to me that we have a crowd that cares a lot about the equity, so I would say there will be, as we've seen before. So, any other questions from the back?
So just to build on what...
We'll have, by the way, guys, we have unfortunately only the time flew by, so we have only time for 2 questions. Yeah.
So Jim, I think what you were saying makes a huge amount of sense about how AI natives, it makes a lot more sense to be capital efficient at an earlier stage. Rather than say joining the VC escalator at the first pound or £100,000 of revenue. But how do you think the AI native funding journey will evolve, say, from a B2B startup, a B2B SaaS startup, 3 years, 4 years ago? And I suppose just like more of an academic question, do you see a role for public markets earlier?
Yeah, it's a super interesting question. I think it touches on the venture debt part, where it's like I think the funding journey for startups will change, and different tools may be the right ones to use there, because there is a desire for founders to retain more control and the opportunity to do that with the ability to have higher leverage early on. I think no one knows how it's going to play out. My personal feeling is that because businesses are much more capital efficient early on, and it's easier to build, there's going to be a lot more bootstrapping or very small kind of seed angel type rounds to get to initial product market fit. And then you've got a choice in front of you where you may be able to scale revenue much quicker than you've done in the past as well, in which case you can bootstrap all the way, or at least have a very high degree of control. Or it may be that you're building certain types of businesses which require capital infrastructure, maybe robotics, things where actually suddenly then your capital spend may even be higher. So you may well have an interesting situation where you're funding more and more startups with $500,000, but some startups with 100 million. And there's kind of actually not the kind of between paths that we've got at the moment. But certainly I feel like there's not going to be the default of like you go out and build a seed round and then you build something, you build a SaaS software startup. That's just not going to make sense. And actually, also the economics of SaaS startups are probably not going to make sense either. So I think business and revenue models are going to evolve in this world too. And so the whole thing is going to change and look very different. And it will flow through to the way the venture industry works, I'm sure.
Yeah, look, I've already seen companies that raise a small pre-seed round of 2-3 million and then never raise again, just because they're profitable, growing quite nicely. And I think the question is sort of like, what's the path to exit, right? Do you IPO? Do you say to a strategic or a PE, or do you just buy back the stake the VC has, and then just keep going, and then just own 100% of that for the number? And I've seen those cases as well. Look, there has, it's not that the markets are doing that well, but there has not been an AI, company that has IPO'd so far. So we just don't know how these things get priced, because of course you have companies like Cursor going from 0 to 100 million revenue, but it's not a revenue which has 80%, 90% churn. Its retention is a lot lower, but they're growing faster than a traditional SaaS. So actually, nobody knows how they would get valued in the public markets. There's a big question there as well.
From my side, just because I don't want to be adding too much time, but basically, I really believe that the whole venture space will have to dramatically evolve. Like literally, the model that it operates on, it's so first of all inefficient for the times when we need that efficiency. Secondly, that liquidity, that is a huge bottleneck, will need to also be addressed by different structures, different models. So, and also IPO, maybe we won't be talking about IPO because there will be some other way to also access huge pools of capital. So
I think we might see agentic VCs where there's a digital twin of me doing the deals.
That doesn't seem too futuristic to me at least. Okay, we have that question, yes.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, in a world where anyone can build anything, in
data is really important, but I guess for me, one of the things would be distribution is probably the most important, right? If anyone can build anything, then trust who you're going to get it from is more important than what you're going to get. And that maybe brings to the other conversation, because the human bottleneck is likely to slow most of this progress down. You know, the NHS, in fact, you know, we've got godlike technology and the NHS runs on Windows XP. Like that, the technology doing the job isn't, the technology doing the job isn't the problem, it's the human bottleneck. And so you're much more likely to see slow change year on year, but a dramatic like decade, rather than tomorrow like the NHS is full AI. Because we've had AI better than doctors and diagnosis for 15 years, right? How do you implement it in a way that adheres to the current system?
Yeah. So hold on, let me just rephrase this question, just so everybody here hears it. I literally had my ear all the way to you, so let me just rephrase it. So basically the challenge, the bottleneck is that human in the loop equally to accelerate progress, yes? So how do you think that, that's going to be addressed?
So I think, what I mentioned was a steady state, which is assuming all the inefficiencies are being taken care of, which will take time. So of course there will be a period of where humans are the bottleneck, the end markets are inefficient and don't work. But actually, like once that is settled, what does that look like, right? Like assuming NHS is now super efficient and they can buy anything and anyone can build anything, where does the durability or the moat sit?
Well, yeah, and I guess my challenge there would be, is that world then more likely to just be dominated by Microsoft? And say, like SaaS might be there, but these huge companies are who you trust to get your software from. So if anyone can build anything, I'd love to be like, startups have got a competitive advantage because that, but in the grand scheme of things, the trust is what drives the purchase, right?
I can make a counterpoint here. So I think it's an interesting point. And really, your question to me was about how do these things get adopted and what drives that innovation change? Because typically these things take a long time. We sort of overestimate in the short term, but underestimate in the long term. But I think where we access these things through institutions traditionally, it will take a long time. But a counter idea to that is that actually these things are probably more and more accessible to consumers now. So what if instead of going to see a doctor and waiting for the doctor to implement AI support, I'm now just able to talk to an LLM chatbot that is more accurate than my GP. I'm just going to start doing that as a consumer. Nothing is going to stop me from doing that if I'm able to access these tools.
Unfortunately, this is how much time we had. At least a time today, at least on the stage. So, but at the same time, stay and ask those questions. There's going to be the second part of our networking session. So, thank you so much.